Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of the Gospel of Luke. And we've been taking a few sessions to talk about Jesus' boyhood. And we have one more session, and we want to look at those passages at in Luke 2 that frame the event of going to the Passover, which talk about the way Jesus grew. And so I'd like for us to get started by picking up a Bible with an Old Testament in it and turning back to the book of First Samuel. You may remember that Samuel was a child of promise. His mother Hannah had not had a child, could not have a child, and asked God for a child and promised to devote him to the service of God, and she was given a son, Samuel. God hears. Shmuel. God hears, and she as God has kept has responded to her prayer, I should say, she keeps her promise to God, and so we read a lot about Samuel's boyhood, more so than we do about Jesus' boyhood. Well, maybe not a lot more, but some more. And we find out that his mother got to visit him every year, a few times when they came for Passover, when the family came to make its thank offering to the Lord, and how she made him clothes, as he grew, so that he would have, the clothes he needed to serve properly in the tabernacle. And we're told this in First Samuel chapter 2, verse 26. And let's not forget, so much of Mary's song is a quotation of Hannah's song when Hannah received her child. The boy Samuel was growing in stature and in favor with both Yahweh and with men. Wow, does that sound familiar? Because in Luke chapter 2, we read in verse 40, and the child continued to grow and become strong, increasing in wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him. And then verse 52, we read, and Jesus kept increasing in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men. Unmistakable connection. In fact, if we turn back to the first chapter, verse 80, we have this said about John the Baptist. The child continued to grow and to become strong in spirit, and he lived in the deserts until the day of his public appearance in Israel. So even there's a connection there with his upbringing. So I want to talk about what is communicated here, because there is a way of maturing that these men of God experienced that made them prepared for their public ministry. And I want to look at Jesus particularly. There is growth, natural maturity, and that's physical maturity and intellectual maturity. But there's more than just the physical and the intellectual. But let's stop and talk about that too. They grew strong. It, they were not sequestered in a room, with their head over a scroll all day long. Jesus knew the work of being a builder, as his father Joseph, his earthly father, was. From the time he was a small child, he would have had chores, he would have had work to do, and when he goes back to Nazareth to preach, they say, "Is this not the carpenter?" That's how they know him. He's the HVAC guy. He's the electrician. He's he's the skilled laborer that we know from town. Um, and that's how they know him. And so there is a physical growth, and there's an intellectual growth. He would have gone to Hebrew school. He would have learned to read. He would have memorized great swaths of scripture. And of course, we already saw him at 12 years old in the great synagogue at the temple, that grad school for rabbis, where all the smartest um, experts in the law were training with the best teachers available, and how he outshone them all at 12 years old in his knowledge and his ability to use scripture. So there's that. But there's also this deepening relationship with God. And that was true about Samuel, and it's true about Jesus. Um, there is this growing favor, and that just doesn't mean that you're currying favor. Let's not read that into it, but a closeness and a positivity to the relationship. And so he's developing his relationship with God, who is his father, and who is our father because of him. But that aspect was not identical with the intellectual part. Mastering facts is not the same thing as growing your relationship with God. So being able to list the books of the Old and the New Testament, and name all the tribes of Israel, and to never miss your memory verse on Sunday morning are necessary. That's part of growing intellectually. And it also puts the word in your mind so that you can then ponder it the way Mary did and have it embed itself in your heart. But they're not identical. It's not the same thing. There has to be an awareness of God's presence and of God's goodness, a time in prayer, a counting of blessings, a time to meditate and ponder the way his mother did, and I'm sure she trained him to do. And then there's favor with human beings. He he is not a grump, and he's not withdrawn. He's a person who is known in the community and liked in the community because he is a positive force, influence, presence in the community. And throughout his upbringing and his maturity, he increasingly played that role. It's just one sentence. And yet there are these four ways that Jesus continued to mature, that we as disciples need to mature, and that we need to remember. This passage needs to guide us as we raise our own children and help to raise our grandchildren. Jesus kept increasing in wisdom, stature, and in favor with God and with men. Four ways. Okay. We're going to get back into the text next time, and we're going to go to chapter 3. We're going to talk about the ministry of John the Baptist. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.